we're going to be trying to set up monthly payments. And here's the mortgage amounts. Now, the way I set up this spreadsheet, I think it's going to be somewhat interesting to you in that you can change this. What I did was I had in column B the amount of a mortgage that you'd want to take out: 60,000, 65,000, 70,000, 75,000, 80, 85,000, 90, going along here. And what I did was, you'll be able to see in the formulas, whatever is above B4, I'm taking that and just adding 5,000 to it, and then I copied it all the way down. So let's say when you have this spreadsheet, you're looking at mortgages, but they're all going to be above 100,000. Well, you can type in 100,000 here, and it'll just go 100,000 to 105,000, 110,000, 115,000, 120,000. So it'll just automatically change up here. Same thing with the interest rates. Now, right now, I think the interest rates are somewhat low. I think they will go up. Let's say they go up to something like a 7%. Well, on the top, I'm just adding 0.2% as I go along in row 2. So row 2 is just taking the first percentage and always adding 2% up here. Well, you could set this up, and at some later date, you could say, okay, interest rates went up to 6%. Well, you put 6% in here, and then it'll automatically go to 6.2%, 6.4%, 6.6%, 6.8%. So as this happens, as it goes down in future years, you might not be looking at a mortgage now, but you might be looking at a mortgage 10 years from now. To me, I would save this spreadsheet. I would put this in a place where you will always have it, because it seems like later on, you will always be refinancing your mortgage and knowing what the payment would be, the monthly payment would be. That's going to be something that you're going to find interesting. Right now, we're going to start out with mortgages of 60,000, 65,000, 70,000, 75,000. And we're going to start out with interest rates at 4%, and then going to 4.2%, 4.4%, 4.6%. We're going to want to know what our monthly payment would be. And really, this is not that difficult of a spreadsheet to set up and do. If I tried to do it real quick, I could probably, I'm going to walk you through it, but I could probably do up a spreadsheet like this, calculating every mortgage payment in each one of these scenarios, and it'd take me about 5 minutes to do it. I'm going to try to walk you through it at a little slower pace, because I'm going to expect you to do it. And when you do this, this will help you as far as looking at mortgages and saying, how much of a mortgage can you really afford based on what kind of monthly payment would you want to make. To do it, we're going to go to formulas right here. And I'm going to click on formulas, and this is going to be a financial formula. And I'm going to go to payments. Now in payments, I'm going to have the rate. The rate is going to be D2. But then these are monthly rates. This is not yearly rates. Now this payment was set up for yearly calculations of interest. So I'm going to go D2 divided by 12, because it's a monthly payment type scenario. Number of payments are going to be 180, which is 15 years times 12 monthly payments. And then the value of the mortgage is going to be B. And then I'm going to hit OK. And it gives me my monthly payment. Now, for some reason, it puts down negatives here. And what I've done to correct that, and I'm going to go and I'm going to hit F2. F2 pulls up my formula, and before the payment I'm going to put a negative so it makes it a positive number. I don't like seeing negatives. So I put a negative right before my payments. Couple other things I'm going to do is I'm going to use the absolute. Now when I use the absolute for doing this problem, it gets a little tricky, because I'm going to want to take this formula and I'm going to want to copy it all the way down, and then I'm going to want to copy it all the way across. So I have to get a little creative in my absolutes. My absolutes for the D10 formula. The only thing I'm worried about being an absolute on this is the 2. I don't worry about the D. Now I can either type in a dollar sign right before the 2, or I can use my absolute button. And I like using the absolute button because I've just gotten used to it. And if I click it once, it freezes the D and it freezes the 2. Well, since I'm going to be copying this formula across, I don't want to freeze the D. I only want to freeze the 2. So I'm going to press F4 again. Do you see how the dollar sign only stays in front of the 2? And that was from pressing F4. I'll take you back. I pressed F4 once, and both the D has a dollar sign in front of it and the 2 has a dollar sign in front of it. I press it again, and 2 is the only one with a dollar sign in front of it, and that's what I want. Then I'm going to go to the B4, and the B4, I want to do another absolute. So I'm going to be pressing F4 again. I'm pressing F4 to make it absolute. Notice how a dollar sign is before the B, a dollar sign is before the 4. Now, on this particular formula, the only thing I want a dollar sign in front of is a B. Because when I copy it down, I want it to be doing it based on 65,000, based on 70,000, based on 75. So I'm going to hit the F4 again, but I don't want the 4 frozen, I want the B frozen. So I'm going to be pressing it a second time. Notice how a dollar sign is only in front of the B now. So the first time you hit F4, you have dollar signs in front of both of them. You hit it again, it has a 4. I hit it a second time, it has the B frozen. And that's what I want. I'm all set, and now I'm going to hit enter. I do this because now I can take this formula and I can copy it all the way across, and I can copy it all the way down, and it's going to automatically be doing the formulas based on what's in column B or what's in row 2. And we'll see that. I'm going to right click, I can copy, and then I'm going to right click again, and it says, where do you want to copy it to? Well, first I define where I want to copy it to. I want to go all the way over here, and I want to go all the way down here. I defined where I want to copy it to. I'm going to right click and hit paste. And I have a handy dandy little mortgage schedule. I want one row too far. Let's get rid of that. To get rid of this, I right click and say clear content. Okay. Now I know this because I know exactly what my mortgage is and what my payment is. So I always check it to, something where I know I definitely have the right formulas in here. And when I see this, I know I have the right formulas in here. Now, what does this give you? This is for 15-year mortgages. I know what my monthly payment would be. If I had a mortgage of $60,000 and my interest rate was 4%, I'd have monthly payments of $443.81 every month. If I had a mortgage of $100,000 and I had interest, let's say, of 5%, All I have to do is go across and look at the 5% and say, okay, for 5%, I would have a monthly payment of $790.79. Here's the 5% up here. Here's the 100,000 here. Now, to me, I would find this a highly useful tool, especially when you're going house hunting and they say, okay, you'd have a mortgage of this. Let's say you're picking out a house and they say you're going to have 4.6% interest rates. Well, then I know if I have to take a $100,000 mortgage out, I'm going to have $770 as my monthly payment. If I have a mortgage of $120,000, I'm not going to have $770 monthly payments. I'm going to have $924 monthly payments. Now, this could be useful in business too, because in business, you can set up mortgages for building buildings or something like that. So this wouldn't be just for personal use, although I think this will be highly useful for your own personal use. You know anyone who's buying a house, you know, you do this. My dad was in real estate, and I did, this is when I first did up this schedule. I did this up, and I said, how about you give this to your customers? They'll find this useful. Saying, okay, what kind of mortgage can we afford? Well, if it costs $10,000 more instead of $770 in a monthly payment, I'm going to have to pay $847. Can I afford that? Can I afford having a $77 larger monthly payment? If they can, then they'll say, yeah, I'll buy that house for $10,000 more. Somewhat useful. Well, if it's useful having a 15-year mortgage, don't you think you'd want to have this recalculated having a 30-year mortgage? Everyone type in yes right now, and then I'll do it for you. Well, I'm going to do it for you even if you type in no. Anyhow, going to this, right below it, we're going to set up a mortgage schedule based on a 30-year mortgage. And to do that, and I'm going to expect all of you guys to do this, for number one, you're going to want to have this out there. You're going to want to have this so you can use this for the rest of your life. And again, you'll be able to go back and look at these tapes. If you forget how to do it, you can look at these tapes, or you can actually have the spreadsheet out there. But again, we go to formulas. We go to financials. And we're going to be doing up payments. On the payments, the interest rate is going to be now D28. And again, I will divide by 12. The number of payments, now the number of payments aren't 180 because it's a 30-year. A 30-year is going to be 360 payments. So we type in 360. The mortgage amount is going to be B30. And then we're going to hit enter. Now again, this shows up a negative number, so we'll fix that. We hit F2 to pull this up. Go in front of the P and type in a negative. Now we go in front of the D28, and I'm going to do this a little quicker because we went through it. And I'm going to hit F4, and I'm only going to be locking the 28. I go in front of B30, I hit F4, the absolute, and I only lock the B. I hit enter. Now I take this, and I can do the copy or I can drag it. I'm going to drag this all the way down. I got all my formulas there. I'm going to take this. Remember how you can grab that corner? You grab that corner right here and pull it across. And we're done. See how quick that was to do? Doesn't take you a real long time, does it? We take this, Now we know what a monthly payment would be. Let's say if you're having $100,000 and instead of a 15-year mortgage, you have a 30-year mortgage. The 30-year mortgage at 5%, you pay $536. Or a 30-year mortgage at 5%, 15-year mortgage at 5%, 100,000 is saying $790. That'll also let you help decide, do I want to get a 15-year mortgage or do I want to get a 30-year mortgage? Well, if I get a 15-year mortgage, after 15 years, I just can party. I don't have any mortgage. I can celebrate. But you have to look at the payments. Let's say it is a mortgage of $60,000 and you're paying 5%. Well, 15-year, you got to give them $474. 30-year, you only have to give them $322. You'll notice it's not double. Your monthly payment isn't double if you pay it off in 15 years. And why isn't it double? It's not double because you pay less in interest over the life of the loan. A lot less in interest because you're only paying for interest for 15 years instead of paying interest for 30 years. So you look at it and you go, well, if I do a 30-year mortgage, I pay $322. I do a 15-year mortgage, I pay $474. Only $150 more, and I only may have to pay off that mortgage half the time. It's kind of cool, huh? Another little lesson in personal finance, too. But I hope you guys find these spreadsheets highly useful. Is there any questions before we move on this? Does everyone understand how to create this? Because I'm going to expect you to go out and create these spreadsheets yourself. This is the class spreadsheet, so I'm not going to correct it to the nth degree. Although hopefully you get these right because I want you to be able to use these. I will put the corrected one out on Blackboard too. So if you do it wrong, you can grab the corrected one and make sure you do it right so you have this information for the rest of your life because I think this is useful to you. Anyhow, any questions at this time on how to create this? How to do the payment schedule? This has helped me myself when I've done my own refinancing and I've looked at 15-year versus 30 years and I'll look at the payments and I'll know how much it's cost me. Okay, if there's no questions, I'm going to stop sharing this. And then I'm going to get the mortgage one, the retirement one up here. Okay, can everyone see right now my spreadsheet on the retirement? Okay, there was a question out there. Let's see, someone had a question. No, I don't think they did. That was from a previous class. Okay, you guys can see the retirement spreadsheet? This is going to be the graded assignment. This is the one where, I'm going to go through, make sure you have the right formulas. I want to go through some of it with you just to have you understand what it's about. This is going to be, if you're saving money, putting money aside for retirement, let's say in a 401k plan. Now, anytime you would be putting money aside in a 401k plan, and I think I already went through this somewhat when we did absolutes, so you can look at that video. That might help you also do this spreadsheet. But setting this up, you have wage increases where that's going to be a norm through your careers. You can expect an inflationary increase of 3%, or you can estimate that. To me, setting up my own personal finance, I always did that. I always thought, okay, how much will I be making 5 years from now? Well, if I get increases of 3%, or if I get increases of 4%, here's what I can expect to be making at this point in time. Hopefully you work for a company where they give you increases now and then, because we will have inflation. Looking at this economy, I can see inflation is going to come. It's been pretty soft lately, but trust me, 5 years from now, you're going to have some inflation. And then this is income percentage. This income percentage right here is the percent that you can expect to make on the money you have in your investment. I have 10% here because I invest a lot of my money for retirement heavily into stocks. Now, stocks can go up and down, but on an average, stocks make you 11%. If you go back and you look at the last 80 years, going back to even before the Great Depression, stocks on an average have made 11%. So I usually use 10% because I'm heavy into the stocks, and I say, okay, some years it'll be better, some years it'll be worse. I'll just hang on and put up with the worst years because the good years will come. And then the 401k percentage is what percent of my wages am I going to set aside in a 401k. For those of you who don't know what a 401k is, that's where you can tell the government you want to put this money aside for your retirement. And this is the cool part about a 401k. The government won't tax you on it. If you're working for a really good company, and I happen to work for a couple of them, they would have these 401k matches. And when you have a company that has a 401k match, take advantage of it. Don't not take advantage of that 401k match. That's like telling people I don't want money. 401k match means if you put 3% of your wages into a 401k plan, the company will match maybe 0.5% for every percent you put aside. So if you put 3% in there, they'll give you 1.5%. If you put 4% in there, they'll give you 2%. Some companies will even be as high as 1 for 1. If you put 3% into a 401k plan, the company will add another 3%, giving it 6%. When my daughter first started working, she said, "What's a 401k?" And I said, "It's for your retirement." And she said, "Well, they have this matching program where they say if I put up to 6% in, they'll give me 3%, but I don't know what it's about." And I said, "Well, you have to do it." And she was being brand new. She's a nurse down in Chicago. And she said, "What, is there a law? You have to do it?" And I said, "Yeah, there's a law. There's your father's law. Your father's law is you start setting money aside for your retirement. Also, if your company will match it, that's like telling them you don't want money for your retirement. So you do that. I mean, it's just common sense. You set that money aside for your retirement, and if you don't do it, then the company doesn't have to match it. So it's like the company's willing to give you 2% for your retirement, and you say, "No, I don't want it." To me, if a company's willing to give you money, you make sure you take full advantage of it. If it means you got to adjust your living expenses right now to a lower extent because you're saving money for your retirement, that's all right. You'll thank yourself 30, 40 years from now. So hopefully all of you take advantage of our 401k. And also, it has a very extreme tax advantage, because usually when people are working, they're in a much higher tax bracket than when they retire. So it taxes you when you take the money out, which you'll be in a lower tax bracket. While you're working, you're in a much higher tax bracket. So not having that money taxed when you set it aside helps you lower your tax bill. And I never liked paying a lot of taxes, so I tried to do whatever I could to make sure I minimize it. Anyhow, that's what a 401k is about. That's what this spreadsheet's going to be about. on the spreadsheet, we are going to start with the wages at 50,000. Well, what are we going to do? We're going to say those wages are going to increase by 3% a year. So to do that, we're just going to be setting up a formula equals whatever's above here, and I don't have to use any absolutes on this, but whatever's above here, and then I'm going to go times is the start key. I'm going to put a bracket, 1 plus this percent. And I'll put a bracket, and I'm going to hit enter. And I do this so I can copy this down now. Oh, I should have done an absolute. That's the one thing interesting. Once you do this, you can find out, did you really need an absolute? And I didn't need an absolute on the H, but I needed an absolute on the E. So I got to make sure I have an absolute on that. So I'll put that down. Hit enter. Now I'll copy it down. Now I'll be okay. Okay, now, if my wages change by 3% each year, that's what my wages will be. I can check this too by if I hit 0, my wages stay at 50,000 because it's not increasing by anything. If I have 3%, my wages go up by the 3% every year. You can see, well, what if my wages went up by 4%? What would I be making in 10 years? Can you do that? Yeah, just real quick, you'd put in 4% up here, and it'll automatically show you after 10 years how much will you be making. Okay? After 15 years or whatever, it'll just automatically calculate it. Now, I set this up for, I think 30 years. And so that's what I'm expecting you to do. In here, 401k percentage, it is going to be a formula, my wages, and then times my 401k percentage. Now that 401k percentage, I want that to be an absolute. So I hit the F4 and I hit enter. Okay. Now income, I don't have any income in the first year because I'm always doing this based on my beginning balance. Okay. Now, down here in the second row, my beginning balance is always the ending balance from the previous. Hit enter. My 401k contribution, I can copy that down. It's going to be 5.2% because it's 4% higher. We'll change that back to 3%. That's a more realistic number. Notice how when I changed that 3%, it automatically changed my 401k percentage. My income. My income is going to be based on my beginning balance. Okay, so equals beginning balance times my income percentage up here. Okay, and my income percentage, I'm going to hit E3 and then an absolute and hit enter. Notice 5,000 times 10% is 500. Always look at your formulas and look at them for reasonableness, saying, did I do it right? And if you didn't do it right, you look at it and say, well, I think that should be 10% of my beginning balance. Is it 10%? Yes. Okay, I did it right. This one I can copy down. It's just a formula of taking my beginning balance, adding my 401k contribution, adding my income, and that's telling me my ending balance. Now I have all these formulas, and since I have them all set up and I believe correctly, all I have to do is copy them down now, and I have my spreadsheet done. Okay. Now this spreadsheet's kind of nifty. It shows me if I do everything correctly, I'm going to be a millionaire before I retire. 30 years from now, if I set this much money aside, I'll have $1 million by the time I retire. They can call me a millionaire. I always wanted to be called a millionaire, right? If you set up enough for your retirement and set it aside. Now, I try to check formulas here and there. Like if I look at this one, is that 10% of my beginning balance? Yes, it is. Okay, my formulas are working out. Am I always grabbing 3% of my, grabbing 10% of my current wages? If I look here, that's 6,334, and my wages are 6,333.9. So yes, it is grabbing 10% of my wages. You check your formulas. Never just do a formula and say, I'm right. Try to look for reasonableness. Try to make sure it is being calculated right. Once you set this spreadsheet up, it's kind of cool. You can do a whole bunch of what ifs. What if, instead of 3% wage increases, I got 5% wage increases? That would be cool, huh? And what if my income, instead of making 10%, I did make the 11%? Well, we'll change one thing at a time. We changed to 5%, and instead of having $1 million, I'm going to have $1.3 million at the end of 30 years. Even better retirement, right? Or the next thing you can do is say, what if, instead of making 10% a year, and this is interesting, you look at this, 1.3 million. If I made 1% larger over 30 years, what would that do to me? I would have 1.5 or 250,000 more 30 years from now. 250,000 more if I made 1% more a year. And then also you can change the 401k and say, instead of setting aside 10%, what if I set aside 11%? What would that do to my end number? Yeah, I'm almost getting $2 million. Then I'd have 1,702,000 when I retired. I could really retire well. Then I go over to Europe or something, right? Retire in the south of France or something. I don't know. I'd probably want to go to Ireland myself. Okay. I think this is a very interesting spreadsheet. This, this one's probably more for personal finance, but I think it's a good one to do for your own personal finance. And some of this is, I want to give you value personally. I want to give you value for a company. This one isn't as much accounting spreadsheet as personal finance spreadsheet, but you could get this into a company situation too. They might be doing some investments, and this would be a particular spreadsheet that you could set up for some particular company. It might be a stretch there, but I want you guys to go through it for your own good too. Is there any questions on this spreadsheet, how to do it? No? Any questions at all on this? I'm going to stop taping this, and these assignments will be due by the following Sunday, so get out there and do them.